Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this spooktacular Spinsterella story. Pick up your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Legendary comic book creator Peter David passed away this week, leaving behind a legacy of iconic runs of comic books like The Incredible Hulk, Aquaman, Supergirl, and Young Justice, and also leaves behind a legacy as related to the comic book medium and all of the great work he contributed to the medium of comic books, sci-fi, fantasy, and even film. And what's really sad is that while Peter David made great contributions to the comic book industry and the medium of overall entertainment in sci-fi and fantasy, he sadly did not go out here and invest in himself. Now, I was reading a tweet made by Billy Tucci, the creator of She, which really dealt with this whole tragic situation as related to Peter David, and I had to agree with one of the points that he made as related to the passing of Peter David, in that he was giving advice as related to many other comic creators out here to start making investment in yourself, because one of the big mistakes many comic creators make when we're young is that we aspire to work for places like Marvel and DC Comics, and we want to go out here and be company men. However, many of these companies don't go out here and invest in many of the comic creators like the late Denny O'Neil, Dave Cockrum, Herb Trimpe, Russ Heath, and now Peter David. They don't invest in much of this great talent that goes out here and makes many of the great comic runs that go on to sell hundreds of thousands and even millions of copies, nor do they go out here and look to share any of the profits when those comics not only become bestsellers as related to the medium of comic books, and then later on get turned into merchandise like t-shirts and action figures, and are even adapted into films and television. No, many of the comic creators who make all those great comics we enjoyed as kids back in the 80s and the 90s, many of those creators basically don't get any sort of compensation at all from these companies due to the archaic work-for-hire rules that are put in place at places like Marvel and DC Comics, and even many of the indies out here. Many of these work-for-hire contracts basically make it where, again, the only payment many people make is as related to the project that they're currently working on, and they're paid on a page rate that's basically these days as low as $50. I mean, guys like Peter David basically gave us great runs of books like The Incredible Hulk, Supergirl, Aquaman, Young Justice, and many other books, and the only payment that they received for those comics that sold hundreds of thousands and even millions of copies and were basically reprinted into trade paperbacks, the only money they usually got was the money they got from that page rate, which basically for a writer these days is basically anywhere from about $50 to $110 if you're a best-selling comic writer. And again, that's all the money that they get, and that's all they get for all of that work they put into these projects. And it's really sad because, again, nobody wants to invest in giving those individuals any sort of benefits whatsoever. No, these writers out here mostly are freelance, and what's really sad is that the editors who work at these companies, they get more benefits than the writers themselves. And as these writers go out here, what happens to a lot of them is that artists, they go out here and they create a covert contract where they're thinking, oh, if I work for this company and I create these characters, I will, again, as they become bestsellers, that the company will reward them. But in most cases, the company will not reward you because the only thing they're focused on is that work-for-hire contract. And as they're generating all these sales on that work-for-hire contract, they're not thinking about giving you any sort of compensation whatsoever. And that's where a creator has to start really thinking seriously about their career when they're young. The same way that legendary comic creators like Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld thought. Now, back in the early 90s, a lot of people thought that Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, and Todd McFarlane were crazy for walking away from Marvel, but they walked away from Marvel for a reason, because the work for hire contract wasn't paying them. I mean, Todd McFarlane was basically selling about 750 to 1 million copies of Spider-Man every month, took the book from 21 to #1, and wasn't paid a single dime as related to compensation. No, whatsoever as related to all of the things that they made outside as related to that book being a bestseller. Same thing for Jim Lee, who basically took the X-Men to another level with his art and designs. Same thing with Rob Liefeld as related to what he did with New Mutants, turning them into X-Force. Again, all three of these men basically, again, made bestsellers over at Marvel, but Marvel didn't want to compensate those artists for their work, and that's why they went out here and formed Image Comics, and that's why Todd himself basically took things to another level and went to go out here and participate in creating McFarlane Toys in the 1990s, because he saw that he could expand a business and own his own IP in Spawn. And what Billy Tucci was talking about was he wanted many creators to start really thinking about their career long term as they are young, and start thinking not about working for these comic companies, but working for yourself. Because when you're a freelancer like myself, you're basically working for yourself. And as you are working for yourself, you need to start thinking about making that work for you, and think about making that work for you by going out here and creating your own intellectual properties, instead of going out here and thinking about working for Marvel and DC and giving the best years of your life and your own intellectual properties to one of these corporations. Now, a lot of us aspiring comic pros back in the day, like myself, when I was in my 20s, I would sit there and think, oh, it would be awesome to see my characters inside of a Marvel or a DC comic book, and see them being shared with all of those readers, see all of my concepts being out here and being sold in the marketplace. But as I grew older, I started to understand, you don't really want to go out here and give your best work to some other company and they profit at your expense. They go out here, yeah, they will make an action figure of a character you create, but you're not going to get any of the profits from those characters. And somebody else, again, some corporation, going to get billions of dollars at your expense. And what happens to you is that as you're getting older and you're starting to build your family, again, you wind up having to pay for your own health care. You have to pay for your own life insurance. You have to pay for all of the things as related to life. And the company in and of itself, they'll get you on the work for hire. They'll get you to work for pennies on the dollar, but nothing is being invested in you. And as nothing is being invested in you, you're the one who's going to wind up poor at the end of the day. And that's not something I want to see any other comic creator go through. And that's why, again, I got to agree with Billy Tucci, because I know from experience, you got to go out here and start investing in your own characters and your own stories and creating your IPs, and not think about giving it to somebody else at one of these corporations, which will basically take your character. Yeah, they may make an action figure, they may make a video game, but you're not getting any cut of that money. You're not getting a single dime of that money, and everybody's profiting from your creations at your expense. I mean, that was something I really started thinking about around 2012, when I finally started thinking about getting serious about putting the ISIS series together. I mean, back when I was in my 20s to about my mid-30s, I was sitting there thinking, I really want to write comics. And I had this whole proposal I wrote in one of my blogs for a run of Wonder Woman comics, because I had a whole plan to, again, make her this all-American princess and do this whole thing as revamping characters like Dr. Cyber and many other characters. And I thought to myself, I cannot get into DC Comics to basically write that stuff, and it would be really ridiculous to, again, go out here and want to work with DC Comics in writing that character, because I wouldn't own a single thing with that character, and I would be giving away my own ideas to a company like DC Comics, basically going out here giving them my very best work and my very best years of my life. And that's something that I started to really think about. I didn't want to give this company all this time. Now, I've always wanted to write comics, and I've always wanted to write fantasy stories like Peter David did. I mean, this is something Peter David wanted to do since he was 5 years old, and I wanted to do this since I was 9 years old. But as I started to get older, I couldn't get into the comic business, and now I'm thanking God that I wasn't able to get into the comic business, because they would have gotten all of my ideas. I mean, I had ideas like The Temptation of John Haynes and stuff like that. Those were going to be other characters like Phantom Stranger, and that's what I was going to do with John Haynes. That was going to be a Phantom Stranger run. And when it was the other thing with Wonder Woman with Isis, again, I was going to give those ideas away. Would have lost all that money, again, as related to those concepts. But I decided, to just go out here and publish my own stuff on my own SJS Direct imprint. And I went out here and started creating my own characters and my own stories, the same way Billy Tucci did when he created She back in the 1990s. And again, you want to go out here and create your own IPs because, again, as like I talk about in my nonfiction book, Stop Simping in the Workplace, this is your career. And with it being your career, you have to be the one who takes the lead as related to that career. You have to be the one who takes charge as related to that career. And with you being a freelancer, you have to be the one who takes the lead as related to that career and not look to go out here and work for someone on work for hire contracts, or look to go out here and write and publish books and as related to fantasy and look to just get a $5,000 advance on somebody else's IP like a Star Trek or one of these other properties like Star Wars. Yeah, those contracts are lucrative in the short term, but these books get discontinued very quickly within 6 months to a year, and then you got to go out here and start putting fingers to the keyboard once again. And that's time you could be going out here working on your own IP. You could be working on one of your own intellectual properties. You could be working on investing in yourself, and that's something a creator has to do over time. I mean, yeah, you want to work for these comic companies, but you've got to start working for yourself as a creator. You have to start really working for yourself behind the scenes. You have to start working on your own intellectual properties, creating your own characters, creating your own stories. That's something I basically advise many comic creators, sci-fi writers, and fantasy writers to do. You start working on your own stories, start working on developing your own characters, and start building an audience for those characters. That's what I was basically forced to do, because I've been trying to, again, I tried to come into mainstream publishing ever since about 1996, and I couldn't get in the door. Tried to come into comics even before then, couldn't get in the door, and I was forced to start my own SJS Direct imprint and basically have owned all of my characters, own all of my stories, and own all of my own stuff, the same way Billy Tucci basically owns all of his own stuff. And basically, again, since these companies, when they are out here, are making you work for hire and have you on your own, it's just better for you to just be out here on your own rather than work for these companies and then have them sadly abandon you like they have done many legendary creators when they started having fiscal issues and left them basically with nothing. And they had nothing because they, again, sold their thing through work for hire, again sold their work through work for hire, and again work for hire contracts have hurt so many comic creators as they've come out here and again made great contributions, and then when they get on hard times, these same companies don't want to even give you a penny towards your health care or anything, even when you're working in your prime, don't want to give you any sort of benefits or even give you any sort of profit sharing. I mean, many of these characters like Deadpool go out here and make billions of dollars at the box office, but a creator like Rob Liefeld, he can't even get respect at the premiere of his own movie, and that to me is completely egregious. I mean, he basically created a character that's making billions of dollars for Marvel, and he doesn't even get any sort of profit sharing whatsoever. Meanwhile, a guy like Todd McFarlane, who was smart enough to invest in himself, went out here and created the Spawn character. But as he created the Spawn character, he created McFarlane Toys, and basically is now living very well on his own IPs and also making money on licensing IPs, because he had the DC Comics license for a minute and basically again lost it, but he still has the infrastructure to make other types of toys, like licensed toys, like he did with Fortnite and many other lines. And the whole thing is that you have to start focusing on putting yourself first as a creator. You have to focus on putting yourself first as related to your career. I go in depth on this in my nonfiction book, Stop Simping in the Workplace, because I tell guys in that book, you have to focus on putting yourself first. You have to set a goal for what you want to do with your career. You have to set a course for your career and what you want to accomplish. You can't go out here and just work for these companies. That's a mistake many of us Gen Xers, many baby boomers, and many millennials make. Think, oh, we can work for these companies and they will work for us. No, many of these comic companies are basically working for themselves. They want to make profits for themselves, and they're not really thinking about investing in you at all. They're not even thinking about investing in their own editorial, because I think about the way Jim Shooter was treated. I mean, here's a man who basically worked and advocated to try to help comic pros as related to trying to help take care of their needs so they wouldn't get in a bad situation. He was one behind the scenes working to try to get people their art back, and was before he was fired looking to work to try to get many creators health care and other things that they would need as related to them working there. But sadly, people sabotaged Jim Shooter and again looked to get him fired. And sadly, that's what led to many people winding up in the tragic situation that Peter David wound up in. I mean, this man was one of the greatest comic writers of all time. Again, one of the greatest comic writers of the 20th century. And the way this industry treated Peter David was just completely egregious, as I see it. Completely egregious. Here's a man who again led to the sale of millions of comics, went out here and created again sci-fi scripts, and again contributed to this business, and the business basically chewed him up and spit him out and basically broke people's heart, the way the late Jack Kirby said that comics will break your heart. Late Jack Kirby talked about how comics breaks your heart, and it's heartbreaking how many creators, when they get older, can't go out here and make a living at something that they love. And that's as related to these comic companies, because the way they treat them. And that's why a comic pro who's coming in, aspiring comic pro, you've got to start focusing on developing your own IPs early on. I will again just say that from my own experience. You've got to focus on creating your own IPs. That's what I have been doing, because I couldn't even get into the industry, and I had to start creating my own stuff on my own SJS Direct imprint. I had to create my own stuff, and I now own all my own stuff. And it's again, I think it's kind of a blessing from God that I now own all my own stuff, and my own stuff now belongs to me. And if people want to license it for action figures or license it for adaptations like movies and TV shows, they have to come to me. And instead of my stuff working for a company like Marvel and DC, it's working for me. And while it's nice to say, oh, my name is inside of a comic, it would have been nice to have had that as a life accomplishment, but the whole thing is, it wouldn't have brought any economic value to me whatsoever. And that's one of the things you have to think about when you are a comic creator, is the working in comics working for you? Is working in comics working for you, or are you working for comics? I mean, I really think about that whole situation like Gordon Ramsay talks about, as he said, either you run the kitchen or it's the kitchen runs you. And you have to think about that as related, are you working in comics, or are comics working for you? And smart creators like Billy Tucci and many others, they're making comics work for them. And they're making comics work for them because this is all about you being able to profit from your intellectual properties, you being able to profit from the projects you have worked on for years, and being able to profit from the stories that you've created. And that's what do here at SJS Direct. I mean, any story I create, I try to, I mean, I'm the one getting most of the money on those stories. And I also go out here and I understand this publishing business that I can't just work on fiction, I also work on nonfiction. Again, a lot of labor goes into things, but you have to go out here and invest in yourself because these corporations aren't investing in you. And since they're not investing in you, you've got to care about yourself, to put yourself as a creator. And that's what I like to see about many of these crowdfunders. They're putting investment in themselves so that they can have a fiscal future where they can go out here and make money on their projects and not have their projects basically working for somebody else, or wind up even worse, seeing their characters ruined or destroyed by these companies in some crossover event. I mean, that's the saddest part about working in comics. You can create a character and then they can wind up killing them off in some crossover event, and you don't have anything to stand on for all the years of your labor. I mean, I think about comics again, and it's really, again, what's sad what happened to Peter David, because he was a company man who worked for these companies. But what's really sad is these companies never worked for him or even looked to him in his darkest days to give him any sort of help as related to his medical bills, as related to his tax issues or other fiscal issues. And they didn't even go out here and look at other creators who've passed away, like in the case of Butch Guice, or Jackson Guice. Again, I wanted to do a video about him because he was another great creator that sadly passed away. But nobody looks to go out here and look at these creators as they get older and they wind up passing away. And then we look and say, oh, his art was great, but we need to start treating these artists and writers much better, because we put in countless hours on this work. I mean, I put in countless hours on books like the Isis series, or the Esteem series, or the John Haynes series, or many of the Spinsterella books. And sadly, again, when it comes down to things, people don't really appreciate the work many creators put into these books. We'll read them and enjoy them, but won't think, oh, this person has bills, or they're trying to, again, get through a day. I mean, one of the things that I like as working on my own is that many of my viewers do appreciate the work that I do. They'll drop a super chat, they'll drop a cash app. I mean, one of my viewers even helped me put together the John Haynes comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, with a donation. And some people help pay for the covers. I mean, I really appreciate people, again, putting in that support. It really means a lot to me. And that's what happens when you work independently on your own. I mean, that's what I've learned over the couple of years. I've taken to social media after writing blogs for many years. I mean, working on YouTube, again, building an audience, and again, connecting with people. I mean, when it comes to creators like myself, again, it's hard out here, again, to be able to make a living. And the whole thing is that we make it harder if we think working for one of these companies will improve our space. No, when you're a comic creator, you really have to start putting yourself first early on. You have to start putting your career first as related to things and start focusing on you. And I would advise many comic creators or aspiring comic creators, go out here and put your work out here as related to things like crowdfunding or putting together things on Webtoons, but also go on social media, let people get to know you the way I let people get to know me. I mean, one of the things that I was doing even before guys like Ethan Van Sciver came to these spaces was letting people get to know me on on places like YouTube, and talking to people in places like live streams and different shows. I mean, the more I talked about black fantasy and black science fiction, I didn't know the impact I was having on people as related to talking to them and letting them get to know me and the books that I produce. But one of the things you can do as a creator to basically take your career to the next level is sit down and talk to people like I'm doing right now. Just sit down and talk to people. Let them get to know you. Let them get to know your product, because in publishing it's like this. People just don't buy a book based on just the story. They also buy an author. They get to know an author. They have a relationship with the author. That's all part of the whole sales part of the business, is people have to get to know you. They have to get to know who you are as related to the type of books you want to produce. And the more you get on social media and just start talking about your concepts, talking about your products, I know it can be kind of hard because some creators are shy. I myself are shy and I deal with anxiety, but I still come out here because I want to share my books with people rather than just sit there and have them just sitting on my hard drive. No, I want to go out here and share my work with people, and I want to work with other artists and people out here and helping them get their projects out there. I mean, for me, I want people to again start focusing on investing in themselves, because this is, when you work on comics, this is an investment you're making for yourself as related to you and your career. This is something you have to invest in as related to you, and you have to again put yourself first in making that investment, because these comic companies, again, they're not putting you as a priority, and since they're not making you a priority, you have to go out here and make yourself the priority as related to where you're going to go in this business, because you can either again work for hire and work and be a company man and have nothing at the end of the day, or you can go out here and invest in yourself and have wealth building assets that can take care of you when you start to get older, and take care of you and take care of things in your life, and be something you can leave behind for your family as related to being a wealth building asset and a contribution to pop culture as part of your legacy. Now, my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, is available on Lulu.com right now, and you can pick up a paper copy of John Haynes at Death's Door for the same price as it was on the 2022 Kickstarter. And if you want to check out my other comic, Esteem No Good Deed, that comic is on Kindle for just 99 cents, and you can pick it up in the Esteem series book, Esteem Blast from the Past, which is available on Amazon.com, along with the books of the SJS Direct Universe. And those books are the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, books like The Temptation of John Haynes, The Man Who Rules the World, novels like The Thetas, my vampire novel Eternal Night, the books like the Spinsterella series, and my novel Recipe for Success. All of those books are comprising the SJS Direct Universe, and you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to continue to help me stay on the air and help me to continue making great SJS Direct publications by having the money to pay comic artists for their work so that they continue working in this business, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA from the Black Boule in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Pick up your copy of Esteem Season of the Witch Girl in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.